Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television is sponsored by Nutrien. Nutrien, feeding the future.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. My name is Mike McKee and my guest is Lori Adams. She is the Director of Multi-Specialty Research Associates. We're going to find out exactly what she does and I think you'll find it very interesting. So please come back and join us for our perspective. Don't go away.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. We also would like to welcome the listeners on WQHL, the Big 98, and WCJX 106.5, the X, as part of our audience. And with us today is Lori Adams. She is the Multi-Specialty Research Associates Director. And that's a mouthful. Lori, welcome.
It is.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Mike.
You know, I found out through the Chamber of Commerce, you sent out a little, it was a mail piece that came and it said, we're doing a study on migraines. And I thought, wow, this is in Lake City now. This only happens in big cities. So describe what you do. What is you're talking about doing studies on people that have migraines or different ailments. Tell us what you do.
Certainly, Mike. We are contacted by pharmaceutical companies and are asked if we might be interested in participating in different studies in different therapeutic areas. We work with local physicians. Dr. Strauss is our lead investigator. We look at those studies. Dr. Strauss reviews those studies to ensure that they would help our community, help some of his patients, as well as just people in our community. All of our services are free. We look at medications that are near approval, just prior to approval in most cases. We work in later phase development, and patients come to see us just as they would a regular physician. They would see Dr. Strauss or Bryce Cattarelli, who's a nurse practitioner that works with us. You would come to our office. We would see you just as a regular office visit. We do full diagnostics.
Well, when you say full diagnostics, what exactly does that mean? So, all right, let's take for instance migraine, since that's the first thing that we learn that you do. I'm sure you do other studies, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But talk about migraines. What do you do first? Blood pressure, temperature. I mean, all the regular stuff. What else? What else do you do?
Well, when a patient comes to our office, they would give us a full history. See Dr. Strauss, discuss their medical history. One of our nurse coordinators would come in and see the patient, do blood pressure, EKGs in most cases, labs. In some cases, we do additional diagnostics. For the migraine study, we are doing labs and EKGs. They're going to meet with the physician. He will do a full physical exam, review their medical history, and the coordinators get very involved with our patients in that they follow them.
Looks just like a doctor's office.
It is. If you walk into our office, it looks exactly like a physician's office, and we have all the diagnostic equipment there, and so everything's conducted right in our office. There's typically no wait time. The medications that we're working with, as I said, are the newest, and we hope to be advancements in medicine to help our patients. The migraine medication, for example, is a sublingual medication, meaning that you put it under your tongue, and therefore it bypasses your GI tract. So it's immediate relief for our migraine patients.
So it gets absorbed right into your bloodstream.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
Sort of like
correct.
snuff, I guess.
Yeah, sort of
you
like
could say.
snuff. That's correct.
But so here they actually do blood work. So you want to know exactly what's happening to find out what some causes of the migraines might be, or if there was an accident in the patient's past, that you want to know about that as well.
Absolutely. We do the full health workup, including the labs, because we want to know that, number one, that you're healthy. If we find in many cases, or in some cases, we do find things that perhaps you didn't know, and we send that information to your physicians. But we do full lab workup to ensure that everything is stable. And we do ECGs, where we look at a cardiac tracing to ensure that, again, that you're stable and you're healthy, just like a full exam you would get when you go to your physician once a year.
Now, do you have to be referred by a physician in order to participate in this, or does Dr. Strauss kind of take that role as your physician during these studies?
What happens is patients can walk into our office, they can be referred by a physician, they can be referred by another patient that we're working with. But when a patient comes to our office, we notify their primary care physician that they are participating in a clinical trial, and we make all records available to that physician, their primary care physician. Any records or any diagnostics or labs that we may do, we actually make that available to their primary care physician.
So, that would be good to know if there's a physician that may say, well, she's on this, or they're taking this medication, you might want to, if they have any questions.
Absolutely. And the other part of what we do when the patient comes in is we actually send for medical records immediately. That notifies the primary care physician that the patient is interested in a trial, and we get their medical records to ensure that any medications they might be taking there's not a conflict between the medications that we will be administering in the study.
Okay, so the more the merrier, right? I mean,
absolutely.
when you have, you want as many local people to participate in these studies for say, like migraines, because the environment is part of what you're looking at, correct?
That is correct. We may be one site out of, for example, 50 in the nation or even in the world that are participating in this clinical research trial, because in every community they drink different water, they have different activities, different sun exposure. There's a lot of different things. So what we try to do, we're one site in this community, in our small community, that contributes to the advancement of medicine and to perhaps the data associated with this compound.
Well, and I think this is where you look at the research that drug companies do, where they say in clinical trials, this is considered a clinical trial on a smaller level, but as part of a bigger picture for large drug companies, they're getting all the information they need about, well, this is how this one reacts, this is how this one reacts, this does the trick. I think there was a drug on the market that was done for hair restoration, and they found out it was good for other things.
Yes, that is correct.
That
is correct.
If I recall.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
So, and then that drug became...
Actually, the primary use of that drug is now for a completely different indication.
Right, I think it's erectile dysfunction,
That
I
is
believe.
correct. That
but
is
it was
correct.
originally a hair
And
regrowth.
hair restoration.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, things get learned during these clinical trials, but for the patient, it's basically, I want to know why I'm getting these headaches, and I want to know if something that works. And a lot of times these patients are very desperate because they've tried everything.
That is correct. And this medication that we're working with, in particular, the migraine medication, the interesting thing is it actually targets the pain receptors for migraines. So many of the drugs that are on the market right now potentially have side effects that could be harmful, or are narcotics, which we know there is a huge problem with narcotics in our country at this time. And this medication does not have addictive properties. It targets the pain receptors with no euphoric effect, therefore people that have migraines many times have to miss many days of work. It compromises their work. It compromises all their activities. And with this compound, because it's sublingual, It acts very quickly on the migraine and just targets those pain receptors.
Because as we've learned, that when you take a pill and it goes through the digestive tract, it causes stomach issues for some people.
That is correct.
And so that was, so I mean, it's interesting to note that this research is helping to develop better ways to take the drug, better ingredients. I feel like a Papa John's commercial, but better ingredients get to the root of what the cause of the migraine is.
Correct. The delivery system, as well as the drug itself, the action of the drug, as well as the delivery system. We're looking at both of those. And in many cases, we find out that this medication, as you mentioned earlier, Mike, that this medication we might find out, well, it has an additional benefit, an added benefit that we're not even aware of.
I think I read or I heard something, because there's so many drug commercials on television, that this medicine may cause weight loss. Oh, holy!
We're finding out in new diabetic medications
Right, I heard that.
Initially they were targeting diabetes and found out that in fact it has a weight loss component.
Which is good for diabetics anyway.
No question.
So tell me about, is the feedback, do you give feedback to the drug researchers?
We do.
All the time while they say this may be ready, but we need to do this. It's kind of like maybe a recipe, and I hate to use such simple terms, but you got this, this, and this equals this. You're always trying to make that drug better?
Oh, certainly. We're always looking, the pharmaceutical companies are always trying to find better ways, whether it be more effective, whether it be the delivery system being more effective, whether it be a combination of different medications together working more effectively. And when we collect the information, our information is actually compiled daily and sent to the pharmaceutical companies, so they're aware of this information within 24 hours.
Now, do patients keep diaries of
Absolutely.
how they feel? You know, I normally get migraines during the last week of the month, and so they have a diary to know after they take the medication, this is how long it took to make it feel better.
Most of our studies, patients are given electronic diaries. Those electronic diaries look very similar to a cell phone. They take that home with them. They rate their migraines daily. For example, we'll talk about the migraine study. They rate those migraines daily. They rate when they take the medication, how effective it is, how quickly it relieved their migraine pain, or if it didn't relieve their migraine pain. That's important information for us to know. They keep that before and we see that daily. That information is transferred daily electronically and also turned over to the pharmaceutical companies on that day.
So, great work there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Lori Adams of Multi-Specialty Research Associates. We'll talk about some other studies they've got going on and how they may benefit you. And we'll continue when we come back. Don't go away.
Okay, so what would you bring to my company?
What do you need?
I need problem-solving skills.
I got through high school without a car, a phone, or a computer.
No college degree, though.
Not yet, but life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television and WCJX and WQHL, the Big 98 in Live Oak, Florida. My name is Mike McKee, and my guest on the program is Lori Adams. She is the director of the Multi-Specialty Research Associates organization. They are a research group that does patient trials. And this is brand new for Lake City. I believe, if I'm not wrong, it's the first time something like this has been in a town our size, or even our town, ever.
I think we are.
I think, because I believe, Lori, we talked before, if you want to participate in a study, you got to go to the University of Florida or a big town. I know that there was an obesity study that was done here through the University of Florida 5 or 6 years ago, and the folks, because let's face it, we're not the healthiest here. Our diets are all full of fatty foods, and so the unhealthy eating that we do here, they wanted to know just exactly what would help reduce that obesity. So you would have to travel to Gainesville to do that study. Now we have an organization that can do these type of studies right here in Lake City. We're talking about migraines. You mentioned about the diary, and can you say, I guess everybody's different, and that's why you do these trials, but the success of the patients that are doing this latest trial are pretty good?
Oh yes, we're seeing some great success with our patients. Some patients, it's just like any other medication that's given to a patient. Some medications will work for certain people and some won't. And that's as valuable information as knowing that the medication works. Because then we look at different patients, and we talked about earlier the demographic differences, even within our community, the differences between patients, whether it be their weight, whether it be some other health finding that we may have discovered, or whether it just be their health history in general, that perhaps this medication won't work for them. That's important information for us. So we are seeing success, but we're also gaining a tremendous amount of information.
Well, you know, and I think the only organization in our area that keeps track of weight, heart attacks, is the health department.
That is correct.
They do, every health department, every county in the state of Florida has a list of, I mean, all the STDs that are reported. They have all of the flu outbreaks. So they're the closest thing to what you're doing that we have.
That is correct.
And so this is a great group to be associated with. And let's talk about some of the other trials, because, you know, talk about migraines. Everybody that has migraines is ready to sign up now, and you do trials all the time.
We have new trials that come into our facility, I would say weekly or monthly. We do trials because we're multi-therapeutic, we do trials on a lot of different indications. Dr. Strauss is an internal medicine physician, therefore he is able to do trials in all therapeutic areas, or the majority of therapeutic areas that come our way. We are currently doing some Parkinson research. We are doing overactive bladder. We are doing, again, the migraine.
Now, so there's medications for overactive bladder that are being...
Absolutely. And you know what we find a lot of times, Mike, there are medications that have been on the market for some time, and perhaps as you mentioned earlier, patients have tried these and they're just not working for them. And for the study we're doing right now for overactive bladder is targeted at females, but shortly after we finish this trial, we will be starting a trial for men, because that's a common problem for older gentlemen as well.
Let me ask you, as you're marketing your organization, because again, the more patients you have, the bigger the study, the better the data.
Correct.
You know, if you do 2 or 3, it doesn't mean as much as if you do 150.
Correct.
How do you get people to come into your place with overactive bladder? I mean, it's got to be, you know, again, it's got to be a little embarrassing to say, well, I'm here for the overactive bladder study.
Well, I think it is, but because we're a medical facility, people feel comfortable speaking with us and telling us about their medical problems. Physicians refer patients to us. We have patients that come in and say, I have tried everything and I'm desperate. We had one patient contact us and say, I don't go out of my home. I don't leave my home. Nothing works for me. And she
so
came.
They're so embarrassed that they may have an accident that they don't even leave their home.
That is correct. That is correct. And she has
That's
come
sad.
to us, and we are a resource for her where she has no additional resources. One of the things that we haven't mentioned that's very important, our services are free.
Well, you know, I was going to come around to that, because that can be a challenge for some on a fixed income. You know,
Correct.
You talk about seniors in our community that are on fixed income, and you know, as you age, things start failing on you.
Correct.
And this is great to participate and maybe get some relief. And that's really, I mean, being able to live your life outside of your house and being able to do things with other people and maybe travel, Can you imagine getting on an airplane with a condition like this?
She doesn't. The reason I mention that is this particular patient has no health insurance. She has no health insurance. She has no resources. We were her only resource. So she did come into our office and we did welcome her, and she is a participant in our study, and hopefully we can help her. That's what we're here for. Ultimately, in this community, we want to offer lend a hand, a helping hand to our community, and patients can come in and participate in these clinical research trials. And ultimately, as I said, it's to help them. Not only are we collecting the information, which is vital to each and every one of us, but we also hope to help members of our community.
So let's talk about some other trials, because I know we mentioned maybe, I guess incontinence is probably what we should be saying with the bladder control issues. You also have a migraine study. What are some others that you are working with?
We're also working on an Alzheimer's trial. The Alzheimer's medication that we're working with, many times with patients that develop Alzheimer's, and most of us have either heard of Alzheimer's or have been touched by it within our family or someone that we know. In many cases, patients with Alzheimer's develop agitation. The agitation is fairly common because there's frustration involved with Alzheimer's disease. So we're working with a combination of two medications, interestingly, that are already on the market, have been on the market for a number of years, but in combination, these two medications are helping to relieve agitation. And what we're doing in this study is we're working not only with the Alzheimer's patient, but we're also working with the caregiver. And the caregiver, in many cases, has no relief. They have no rest from the situation and truly take the brunt of the agitation associated with the Alzheimer's because of their loved one or friend or whoever it might be. But in this case, we're working with the agitation, and the patients as well as the caregiver are seeing the physician.
Well,
and that's how we're rating that.
When you mentioned the two medications, we had the director of the Alzheimer's Association on the show a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about the fact that the caregivers have to have respite because there's no rest for the weary in that. But the interesting thing that you just mentioned, you're taking two different drugs to treat the agitation that some physicians may not have thought about giving.
That's correct.
So what I'm hearing you say, and maybe I'm wrong, is that feedback from the success of these drugs is going to the medical community as well after these trials.
Absolutely. These two medications, as I said, are on the market. These are readily available. So in combination, these can be prescribed for patients in regular practice. And the other thing is that if we find these positive results and they are working well, we have seen that, these will be available to them immediately.
Well, and I think that's when you go to your doctor and they say they've got a new shot for bone density that has just come out on the market. That's because the medical community talks with each other and they find out through these trials just exactly what's working, what's not working, and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. So it's all part of a big picture in making people or trying to keep people as healthy as they can. You mentioned Parkinson's. That's got to be a tough one.
It is. It is. And what we're doing with Parkinson's disease, we're doing some early research on that. We are looking at markers. They're called biological markers for patients that develop Parkinson's. What causes a patient to develop Parkinson's? So it's a little bit different. That study, we're not using medications. We're actually collecting information and collecting blood samples so that we can try to figure out why does one person get Parkinson's and perhaps not another. That's also part of the research process in our country.
What other studies? Because I want to mention several so that if people are interested, they can get more information from the website. But what are some other studies that are constantly going? We're
also getting ready to start a low back pain study. And low back pain is prevalent and very common. And again, hopefully we can offer an alternative treatment other than a narcotic.
Yep.
Correct. Other than a narcotic. And that study is set to start very shortly. We do have an additional migraine study that we're working on. We also have an atopic dermatitis, which is a derm study, which is fairly common for a lot of people. We are looking at some psoriasis studies, which is also a difficult thing for people to cope with, and perhaps we can offer an alternative treatment. Trying to think, every month we're getting different studies.
Well,
So-
and again, this is, you mentioned that I just read the other day, we're throwing billions of dollars at the opioid crisis.
Correct.
You would think they would throw a little money your way because you're looking at ways to treat through other means versus, I mean, when you talk about migraines being treated without opioids, that to me is half the battle.
It's a huge advancement for us. It's a huge advancement. For patients, as you mentioned, the opioid epidemic, this would be a huge advancement for us. We're all very excited about this new treatment. We're also, let me mention, we are also working with a new vaccine. And that new vaccine is for C. diff, C. difficile, which is very common in patients that have been hospitalized and are released from the hospital. They might develop this infection, or patients that have had antibiotics. This is also one of the risks of antibiotic therapy. There's a new vaccine for us that we're looking at now that would actually help patients not to develop this, and also would keep them out of further hospitalization or health crisis, because this can be a very severe illness.
Okay. I tell you what, we're going to take one more break on Perspective to allow the sponsors of the program to talk about themselves a little bit. We'll be back with more with Lori Adams from Multi-Specialty Research Associates. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
I've just been really flabbergasted by the information I've gotten here today on our Perspective program with Lori Adams of Multi-Specialty Research Associates. You know, this is really good information that I think everybody should know about. If you have a condition, they may be doing a study that you could participate in and maybe get a little relief from back pain, migraines, other maladies. You wanted to mention one last thing before we left about stipends that some patients get.
That's correct. As I mentioned earlier, our services are free, and also patients are paid for participation in our trials. An example is our Alzheimer's trial. The Alzheimer's patient receives $750 for their participation, and the caregiver also receives $750. So not only do we try to assist you with whatever disease that we're targeting, but also there is compensation for participation.
Yeah, that's very good, especially if you're in a hardship where getting to the office could be a little bit difficult. Right. If you have maybe trouble getting someone in the car and things like that. So let's show the website and contact information. It's Multi-Specialty Research Associates, which is a mouthful, but if you just say MSRA, you got it. And it's 4551 West US 90, Suite 101 here in Lake City. Is there a website?
Yes, it's msrainc.com.
And you can go on there and you can find out when the next clinical trial is going on and if it fits the condition you have in your life at this point in your life. Lori, again, I knew this was going to be interesting. I thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you for watching and listening to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television and WCJX and WQHL. Till next time, I'm Mike McKee. We'll see you.